Stop me, 'cause I'm having a good time, having a good time. I'm a shooting star leaping through the sky like a tiger, defying the laws of gravity. I'm a racing car.
Hello everybody, and welcome to the first part of our look at the new things brought to the game with the release of the Spiteclaw's Swarm expansion for Warhammer Underworld's Shadespire. Now, in this series of videos, we're going to be giving you a basic preview of what you can expect. We'll be changing in the meta with the introduction of a brand new faction and a bunch of new universal cards. Along those lines, let me start off with the statement. If you're wondering if the purpose of this video is to answer the question of whether or not you should buy this expansion, of course you should buy this expansion. This is a living card game. In order to stay competitive, for better or worse, you're going to need every expansion because, especially with the structure of this particular game, every new expansion brings immense changes to the meta. So if you're going to be a serious competitive player, which here on this channel we are catering for specifically, this is going to be a strong purchase for you. And I could say that without seeing any of the cards. That's the other thing that I want to point out. Prior to this moment, I have not seen any of the cards that I'm about to put here on this board. The whole purpose of these videos is to get my initial opinions, the things that jump out at me as soon as I see these cards for the very first time. I have not had time to really look at these and think about all sorts of clever shenanigans you can pull off with them. These are going to be things that just immediately spring to mind. We'll have future videos that go more in depth and have had more research put into them. But apart from the things that have been shown off on Warhammer Community, this is going to be as close to my unvarnished, sudden initial opinion as possible. So let's start off with looking at the Skaven themselves. So we have our leader, Scritch Spiteclaw. Okay, so that's a very familiar stat line for an attack. It looks like he stole that from the Sepulchral Warden. At 2 range, 2 hammers, and 2 damage. That's right off of his 5 movement speed. That's incredibly fast. This is now the fastest thing in the game. These guys start out as fast as Khorne Bloodbound are when they inspire. And when I flip them over, I believe we're going to see that change into a 6. I bet you anything. Dodge defense dice, which is not great. 4 hit points, which for a leader also not great. So his special abilities: Wicked Halberd. If you roll at least 1 crit, this attack action has Cleave. Okay, that's not bad. And action: place a friendly fighter that was taken out of action other than Kirk on any starting hex and remove all their wound counters. Okay, wow. So this is about as characterful as it gets. Skaven steal things. They love to steal things, and true to form, they have stolen something before the game even started. They completely stole everything on the Sepulchral Warden's card. And in fact, they've improved on it. Because if you'll remember, the Sepulchral Warden can only put his resurrected minions on his own territory, on any of these starting hexes. Scritch here can have his guys appear on any starting hex. Way back in your opponent's backfield, over here. That opens up a lot of options, and I think it's going to add even more excuse me, even more tactical weight to decision at the beginning of the game to set up your board placement. So that already is extremely strong. Let's go ahead and get him excited. He inspires. A player chooses his fighter when using a ploy. Okay, that's an extremely easy way to inspire. My theory going into this, just from my own personal conjecture, is that I had a feeling that the Skaven deck was going to be, most Skaven decks were going to be very ploy heavy. So this kind of feeds into that. Once he is inspired. Alright, so he gains a damage on his stab attack. He still has the cleave on crit ability. He has gained an extra defense die. That makes that dodge actually pretty good, because this is going to increase your chance at a crit. I've played Khorne Bloodbound decks based around getting extra defense dice on Garruk, and just going from a 1 to a 2, even if it's on dodge, is still a huge benefit. Okay, so it looks like I was wrong about him getting any faster. He still stays at 5. And he still has the same ability. So not a lot of change here. The big takeaways are he's going to do 1 more damage. He's going to be a little bit harder to kill. Okay. So, Kirk the Almost Trusted. That's an excellent name. Okay. Warding Spear. Interesting. It's a spear, but it's only got 1 range on it. He seems to be choking up on it. I guess he hasn't figured out how to use the reach of a spear. 2 hammers, that's pretty solid, and 2 damage. You're definitely looking at this guy in the Bone Cutter or Bloodied Sake level of power. He inspires under the same condition. Nothing else super special about him. He's fast. Oh, that's interesting. He's got a shield as opposed to a dodge. I think this is the first time we've seen varying defense ratings amongst a particular warband, unless you used Remembered Shield in a Sepulchral Guard warband. So this guy's a tank. Unfortunately, he's also a tank with only 3 hit points. So that's going to be difficult. It's also worth mentioning that he is the one guy, other than himself, of course, that Scritch can't resurrect. This is going to be a tricky guy to use, I can already tell. Let's get him excited. Okay. Nothing here is changing. It's still the same old attack. See? 1, 2, and 2. 1, 2, and 2. Same speed, but he's gaining a defense dice. That is now Stormcast level hard to killedness. That's going to make him really tough, but anybody who has used Cursed Artifact knows how difficult it is to keep somebody alive, even if they have 2 or 3 or 4 defense dice, but only 3. It only takes 1 getting through and 1 bad roll. So that's interesting. I want to keep him in mind as we look at the other cards that we're going to be going through to see how we can kind of modify this. He's definitely going to be a strong contender for things like Great Fortitude. Anything that's going to get him more hit points. Okay. And then we have the chaff. And the Spiteclaw Swarm has 3 chaff. And this is all they've got. They've got the leader, who's awesome. This guy, who's okay. And finally, hot, stinky garbage. Okay. So they each have a unique name, sort of. We've got Festering Skaven, Hungering Skaven, and Lurking Skaven. I'm not really sure that there's any kind of Skaven who is not all 3 of these things. But we'll start with old Fester here. Fester has a 1 range, 2 dagger, 1 damage attack. That's awful. That is awful. That is... This guy may challenge Targor for being the most useless. He's fast, though. He's got 1 defense on dodge and 2 hit points. So, he's going to be exceedingly easy to kill. But he might be a good backfielder. Let's get him excited. If for some reason you spend a ploy on him. Alright, he goes to 3 daggers. Still 1 damage. Not great. He's going to be a lot trickier to kill, though, because he's going to 2 defense dice. This may be a good Harrier, because he's so fast, and because he goes to 2 defense dice. If you can get him inspired early in the game, and luckily, because of Spiteclaw Swarm's Inspire ability, that's going to be really easy to pull off. So that just made him a lot better. Alright, so let's see. Hungering Skaven, who appears to have nunchucks. Okay, that's awesome. Okay, Scavenge Flail, 1 range, 1 hammer, 1 damage. A little bit better than his compatriot. I think I'd rather have 1 hammer than 2 daggers. Same speed, same dodge, same health. Let's get him excited. Goes to 2 hammers, but still 1 damage. It's enough to be annoying. I had mentioned in looking at some of the cards in Chosen Axes, I'm seeing a lot of things focus on doing 1 damage, and this seems to follow that trend of chipping people down. And this guy would be very good for that, especially because, like his festering buddy, Old Hungry here gets 2 defense dice, which is going to make him annoyingly difficult to put down. Alright, and finally, Lurky. He seems to be the strongest of the chaff here, because right off the bat he's starting with 2 daggers, 1 damage, but already he's got 2 dodge. So you don't even need to inspire him before he becomes really good for harrying your opponent and annoying them. That seems to be the theme with all 3 of these chaff, is that they're going to be annoying for your opponent to deal with, which is going to make anything that lets you throw out little tiny bits of damage, like AoE attacks, that much stronger. Let's get him excited. Not a lot of changes here. He just gains 1 dagger on his attack, and nothing else seems to change. He goes from 2 to 2. Yep. Okay, so this guy you don't really need to worry so much about inspiring. He's already going to be able to do his core job from turn 1. So that's interesting. So what's the takeaway from the entirety of Spiteclaw's Warband? You have a very strong leader. Your mid-range is underwhelming, but suited for a very specific purpose. And you actually have what appears to be some of the better chaff in the game. I would put these guys right up with, or maybe even ahead of, Haka and Basha. I mean, they're certainly a lot better than Targor or Arnulf. They're certainly a lot better than Petitioners. They kind of have the weight of numbers to put them ahead of Mad Magrum. These are very interesting. But with them in mind, let's go ahead and move on to the objectives that you're going to have available. These are going to be the objectives that are specific to Spiteclaw's Swarm that come in this set. Alright, first off, we have Feast Feast. Okay, 3 glory. Score this in an end phase if all enemy fighters have been taken out of action. Wow, okay, coming out of the gate pretty strong. I don't know. This is Annihilation, but for fewer points. And my problem with Annihilation type cards is, if you have managed to accomplish this, you've probably already won, and you don't need to stack extra glory points on it. Plus, I don't know right off the bat, just from what I've seen so far, if the Skaven are going to have enough offensive oomph to really have a chance at taking out all enemy fighters. So this might be filler. Okay, moving on. Arm's length. Score this immediately if your warband takes an enemy fighter out of action while they are adjacent to none of your fighters. Okay, so this is one glory point, and essentially requires you to either kill someone with a ploy or kill them with a ranged attack, either with a spear. You know, we've seen builds of Sepulchral Guard based around really pumping up the ward and killing people. Looks like you can definitely do the same thing with Scritch here. Alternately, as more cards become available that give range attacks, for example, Shade Glass Darts, this is going to become a lot more doable. Plus, this is a score immediately, which is always a huge benefit, because it allows you to get that critical first upgrade as early as possible and possibly increase the maximum glory you can get in turn 1, or any turn for that matter. So this is a very strong choice. Brilliant, brilliant. Score this in an end phase if you scored 2 or more other objectives in the preceding action phase. Okay, so we've seen this a lot. There's, I believe, a Universal card that does this. There's a Sepulchral Guard card that does this. I call these confidence cards. They're a risky play to put into your deck, unless you have specifically chosen a whole bunch of objectives that are really easy to pull off. Let's keep that in mind and see kind of what other objectives they're going to have available to them, because this will inherently synergize, but it's hard to pull that off. Honed Survival Instinct. Score this in an end phase if no friendly fighter was taken out of action in the preceding action phase. Okay, so you know, we've seen Stormcast try to pull that off with varying success, but considering a lot of your guys have that, that's going to be really difficult to pull off. At the same time, though, they also have that, and they're really easy to inspire on top of that. So with that in mind, I had sort of suspected that we're going to see that kind of keep away play style that's been popular amongst Stormcast would probably pop up amongst Skaven. I think they are fast enough to pull that off, and their dodge is high enough where this actually might be more doable as Skaven than as Stormcast. The problem is, for all the effort you need to put into making sure this happens, you're getting a grand total of 1 glory point out of it. So I'm not honestly super excited about that. Leading from the back. Score this in the third end phase if your leader is in your territory and not adjacent to the enemy. Okay, so this, I don't like this for a couple of reasons already. One, it's a third end phase card. 2, it's a third end phase card that only scores 1 point. And 3, it requires you to take your best guy and keep him out of the fight. And that might be the Skaven way, but the cost seems to be way too much for the reward. I've said many times, and you'll probably hear me say this on many of these videos, I hate third end phase cards because I will inevitably draw 2 of them in my opening hand. And even if I draw 1, I'm going to get aggravated because I've either got to dump it or deal with that dead weight. Live to fight another day. Score this in the third end phase. Damn it! Score this in the third end phase if the only surviving friendly fighter is your leader. Okay. So this is the weak version of Khorne's Champion. This might be a good way to turn a game that you're almost definitely losing into a game you might be able to squeak out a tie or a win, but I don't like to build my strategy around losing. Now, that being said, we haven't seen the upgrades that are available in this. And we've seen a lot of decks, Khorne Champion style decks, that are based around pumping up one particular character. I often call them Superman decks. And old Scritch definitely seems like a strong contender for a play like that. So let's keep that one in mind as we move on. Lives are cheap, but models aren't. Heyo! Score this in an end phase if 2 or more friendly fighters were taken out of action in the preceding action phase. Okay. I kind of feel like this is a trap. For the same reason that I feel like the resurrection mechanic with Spiteclaw Guard is a trap. You've only got 12 activations, and spending activations on resurrecting somebody is very tricky because that's an action that you've essentially done nothing with except try to gain back lost ground. At the same time, you're also spending the actions that it took to get your own guys killed, plus you've given 2 glory points to your opponent and gained 1 out of it. I don't like it. Numberless Swarms. Score this in the third end phase if there are 5 friendly fighters on the battlefield. Again, this is another difficult one to pull off. You've only got 5 characters, so you need to keep them all alive by the end of the game, or spend a lot of actions on resurrecting them. And with a lot of your guys having a grand total of 2 hit points, this is going to be really difficult to pull off. And again, same problem here. Third end phase for 1 glory. That third end phase statement represents a massive cost, and for just that much of a benefit, I don't know. I don't see it. And finally, we have Scritch is the greatest. Yes, yes. Score this immediately if your leader takes an enemy fighter out of action. Okay, any fighter. So this is very much like the biggest and the best card for Iron Jaws. Definitely one of the stronger cards that we've seen in looking at these objectives. It's a score immediately. Your leader is definitely the strongest contender in this faction. And it can trigger on taking out any enemy character. So you can just have Scritch run up and kill somebody's chaff real easy and snake an easy glory point too. Easy glory points counting what you get from killing the character itself. And then it score immediately, so you can go in and straight up draw another objective. So that one's great. So, okay, let's go back and look at all of these objectives. Let's see, we'll put good over here. We'll put bad over here. And we'll put ugly down here. So Scritch is the greatest is good. Lives are cheap is ugly. And when I say ugly, I mean, yeah, on paper it seems bad, but I do recognize that there may be a way you can build your deck around planning for that, and it might be a hidden gem. And then bad are things that I just think, and again, this is my first initial reaction. I might be wrong, and if you disagree with me, please feel free to put your opinions in the comments down below. But yeah, this just seems bad to me. Okay, so live to fight another day. I'm going to call that ugly. Leading from the back, I'm going to call that ugly. Because I could see a particular strategy making that useful. Hone survival instincts seems bad to me. This one is going to be too hard to pull off because, look, you've got to get 2 objectives in the same phase, and already we're seeing a lot of really difficult to achieve objectives. Arm's length is actually pretty good, and feast is basically the poor man's annihilation. So I'm going to put that under bad. So out of all of the specific Spiteclaw swarm objectives, only 2 of them are really good. Which that's going to represent a huge disadvantage to Spiteclaw swarm in the meta. I'm interested to see how they will interact with their universal cards, and if they can find ways to get glory points in methods other than these objective cards, because I'm seeing some crap, and I'm seeing some objective cards that are going to be really difficult to use. But again, these are my initial opinions. Let's move on from here and look at the other Spiteclaw swarm specific things, and we'll do that in our next video. In the meantime, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Please like, share, and subscribe. Have a good one.